Welcome to the Saturday Night Live Afterparty. With season 46 just around the corner, we thought it might be fun to break down the slew of news that's dropped recently about SNL's unprecedented post-COVID return. I'm Katherine Coleman, and I'm joined this week by audio podcast holdovers Steve Finn and John Murray. If you'd like to connect with any of us, you can do so at snlpodcast.com. All right, here we go. We are back. Welcome back, everybody.
We are here.
Yes, we left off in the craziest time. We had no clue what the world, let alone SNL, was going to look like come fall. You know, normally we go into the summer just worried about if Kate McKinnon will be back or not. And this summer, instead, we had a full-blown apocalypse. So we didn't know if we would even survive long enough to see season 46. Mm-hmm. So with that said, how was everyone's summer?
Of all the things to lose sleep over this summer, Kate McKinnon's return was not one of them. Interesting.
I mean, I disagree, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. Yeah, cast turnover was the least of my concerns. Right. You know, as we watch the world burn around us and, you know, so many daily developments to keep us, wow, just all riled up. It is a very different world than it was a few months back. And SNL now has the challenge of figuring out how to comment on that, making us laugh in the midst of so much crazy and finding some sort of normalcy, just in being back and what they're actually going to be able to do with, you know, different COVID restrictions and so much else. So yeah, it's not really about cast turnover so much as like, what is this next season really going to be? And, it's going to be so exciting to break it all down.
Yeah. I'm excited. Steve, how about you? How you doing?
Well, you know, I had a great summer. It was, I took it as an opportunity, you know, to get down to the basics, spend time with family. I learned to make my own beer. I've been drunk this entire time. I'm heavier than I've ever been, and I don't care. Nothing like that even phases me anymore. It used to be all I'd think about, but you know, I'm a new person. This is going to be a new Steve from here on out. We're going to have a great time on this podcast.
Is drunk Steve drinking Steve's homebrew out of his M&M mug?
That's right. And yes, the sexy green M&M is the perfect receptacle for my fruity Hopacana IPA. I'll send you a case. You're gonna love it.
Was that a plug? Like, is this something people can actually get their hands on if they're so inclined, or is this literally being brewed in your basement?
No, this is just, you know, I have it fermenting in a carboy in the basement. It's for my own consumption, and it's not even that good. You know, I'm new at this.
Awesome. Well, I had an all right summer. You know, I tried to stay busy. We were trapped at home for most of it, but I did manage to join a virtual comedy sketch team at a theater that's based in DC. So that's a fun new experience. Yeah, and we have our first show on Wednesday night at 8 Eastern, and you can find out more about it at litcomedy.com.
Now that definitely was a plug.
That was absolutely a plug.
Very
LIT comedy, right?
That's
it. I have that correct? I'll check that out for sure.
So if we're gonna, you know, go plug heavy right out of the gate here, why don't I talk a little bit about the state of the show and what we have cooking for our patrons? Can we do that, Kathy?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So hopefully, some folks may be watching us chat about SNL tonight rather than simply listening through their podcast app of choice. And that's because we have spent the summer tooling up, trying to figure out how to switch over to producing this as a video first podcast. The intention being that we want to release the full episode for our patrons, either on Patreon or Subscribestar for anyone that's not down with Patreon. We hope to be able to put those out Monday nights moving forward. It may take us a few weeks to kind of get on top of our game and hit that release time, but that's what we're driving towards. And then same as what we were doing with the audio podcast, we're going to be putting out a highlights version of the video podcast online, or maybe clips, or there's going to be some stripped down version of it that's going to be on YouTube for anyone to find and discover and hopefully enjoy. But it's not going to be the full cast. That's still going to be exclusive for our patrons. So anyone that wants to come in at the $4 level, that's our featured player tier, they're going to be able to basically get everything we produce, video and audio. $4, that gets you everything. And our tiers on Subscribestar are going to be exactly the same as they are on Patreon. So it doesn't matter where you find us. If you want to support us, either of those platforms is going to get you the exact same content at the same time. So yeah, whichever one you're more comfortable with, that's where we'd love you to find us. And for everyone that is just kind of down for the audio podcast, nothing changes. You know, we're producing this as a video now, but we've always done this as a video chat. So this really doesn't change the format of the show or how we approach it. It just kind of changes the way people are going to be able to discover it and hopefully enjoy it. So if you're just audio only, it's still going to show up in your podcast app, same as always. If you're a patron, you're still going to have your exclusive patron only feed to get the full length episodes. Whatever you were paying before, that still gets you everything that you got before. So we're not leaving anyone behind in this transition. We're just simply trying to add additional value on top of what we were previously offering. And yeah, we're just excited to see if we can make something that is maybe a little more enjoyable than just the audio version that we'd done previously. And we would be excited to hear any feedback from anyone that takes in the show. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we could punch up. Obviously, we're learning as we go, so whatever we can do to up our game, we want to hear about it. Be brutal, as always. All feedback welcome. That's basically the state of the show.
I am thrilled about this video production. I think it's going to be really awesome. So, that said, let's move in to this crazy amount of news we've gotten from SNL in like the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And up first, I just want to say it early on here, not a lot to discuss, but I want to congratulate all of our SNL Emmy winners. We had Eddie Murphy, Maya Rudolph, the director Don Roy King, the light and production departments, and they also got Outstanding Variety Sketch Show Series. So I was really happy for everybody, and congratulations.
Yep. Every year they pull in a few, but it's nice when there's something that was maybe a little more unexpected. I don't know if Eddie Murphy's Emmy was unexpected, but it's something that a lot of people feel is kind of long overdue. And, even if it's just an attaboy for recognizing everything that he brought to the show back in the day, as opposed to just the episode he turned out, which I thought was a fantastic episode. As much as I may be biased, I thought that was a lot of fun. So I think it was well deserved. But that's the one that I personally feel stands out and has me grinning, you know.
And we're definitely going to see Maya have an opportunity to take a victory lap for her win.
Oh, yeah.
Having Kamala as Biden's running mate. And I'm definitely excited for that. But congratulations to everyone who's won awards.
Yeah. All right. Well, we had one huge piece of news that we're going to break down into several pieces of news. Mm-hmm. And that is we're going to be in the studio for 5 straight weeks, unprecedented, starting next week, October 3rd, with Chris Rock and Meg the Stallion.
I'm breaking a sweat just hearing that.
So the first thing let's talk about, and this is something that Travis Kemp also wants us to touch on, they're going to be having temperature checks at the door, limited audience, rapid COVID tests, quarantine. So let's talk about, the pros and cons of going in the studio and what that's going to look like.
It's going to be interesting because, we're going to hear a little bit of a thinner applause than we're used to with the distance crowd. There's going to be a crowd. So I'm happy for that. I'm happy to get live reactions because, some of the most awkward moments of the SNL at home were, the parts where you would expect to have that laugh track in there. So that's great to have. Yeah. Seems like we're not going to have every single cast member in studio. Some people are doing it by distance, it seems. But it's going to be interesting to see, how they tackle all those limitations. And, if I know my SNL, I think they would take that opportunity and create great comedy that they may not have thought of doing before and use it as an opportunity more as rather than a challenge. I mean, it's still going to be a challenge, but we might see some new stuff that, where they're forced into this corner, they make the best of it and come out with some great stuff.
Hopefully. Sometimes adversity, breeds creativity or ingenuity, or like they solve problems in ways that end up being more novel and enjoyable than if they hadn't been put in a situation where they had to create those solutions. Adversity isn't always a bad thing in the creative process. We'll see what that translates to. Obviously we have no way of really knowing, and honestly they don't. Literally, as we're recording this, they're still sorting out production specifics and figuring out how to really just get on top of their game in the space that they have to work with. A lot of what I was reading. So basically what happened was a couple weeks ago, they realized that their figurehead, Lorne Michaels, had to come out and basically reassure the world that SNL, would be returning and, in true to form. So he went and did a media blitz. They did a full court press and they just basically opened the floodgates on everything that they could say about the season. They couldn't say much about hosts because apparently that's still in flux. But yeah, as news dropped, he was out front and center doing interviews, trying to paint a picture of, it's a new era. We don't exactly know how it's going to go, but hey, this is SNL and, we come through and we've got great talent. And so he was that steady hand, that's the picture they were painting. So I read, those interviews that he did, and it sounded like what he was describing was very similar to what I assumed the production would look like when we talked about this on some of our previous casts. Basically they're going to be in the studio, but they have to work around whatever complications come from not being able to have as many people on the floor. And he said specifically, that might mean that we need to pull back a camera and get a camera operator out of the room rather than just have everybody on the floor, waiting for their cue. Like there's going to be a bit more shuffling around. Cast members may not be doing quick changes on the floor or, having their whole entourage kind of doing them up, in the space because we need to have more specific areas designated for that kind of stuff. So they're working through all of the production stuff to figure out how to get something to air in the studio. But the end result, even though it's going to be stripped back and probably rely a lot more on pre-tapes, because another thing that we heard is that they've been rounding up additional production facilities and sound stages and things like that so that they can ramp up more pre-tape content quicker and have more units running simultaneously. So it sounds like because they can't have as many people in the space during the actual live show, they're going to be finding creative solutions to fill in the gaps so that they have longer to do setups. Less people to build sets in the space. Well, it takes longer. So we need to have another pre-tape to fill the time while we're prepping for the next live sketch. So they're realigning things. So it's a different way of executing on the show that's going to obviously have to prioritize some content over others just because of the reality of the amount of manpower they can have. But the end result should be an hour and a half of comedy. And honestly, SNL's pre-tape game has been on fire for a few seasons. So if really the solution to all this is a little bit of social distancing and a little bit more reliance on like film unit pods, just kind of doing their thing in isolation a little bit and just working through the week on their little pet projects so they have more stuff ready to go for Saturday, that could turn out a fun show in its own right.
Right.
Yeah. If the stakes of producing a 90-minute sketch show live every week weren't high enough, now they have this additional pressure of, hey, if any one of you test positive, we have to shut this down for 2 weeks.
Yeah, how crazy is that? It all hangs on one COVID test.
Yeah, I am stressed out. Mm-hmm. I'm not even working on the show, but I am stressed out about like mid-October. Like we're going into the election. It takes one person to shut it down and we lose our election episode, which makes me wonder, do they have a contingency plan of putting up some at-home episodes if that were to happen during those 2 weeks, especially if it's the election time? So I'm very interested to see what that might look like if they end up having to do that quarantine.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, let's not hope for the worst. It'd be nice. I'm sure that they have to have, they've been trying to map this out all summer. So they have plans A, B, and C, obviously. They've tried to explore all options. So it's not a matter of them not considering that reality.
Right.
But their plan A is mitigation? What can we absolutely do to never get to the point where we have to actually cross that line and scale back and figure out what an alternate production would look like?
I gotta hand it to them. They're ticking all the boxes, it seems, just to make sure that that scenario that we're all dreading is as unlikely to happen as possible.
I think it's going to make it a lot more intriguing for people that are very casual SNL viewers to tune in, because they know they're watching not just the typical stunt of SNL, but they're watching a real tap dance, a real ballet in many ways. You know, like, can we do SNL without anybody making physical contact? Like, what would that look like? Like, that's a whole different sport than what it normally is. So I have a feeling that's going to intrigue a lot of people over and above just the election cycle stuff that's already going to be bringing in fresh blood. So I would expect some solid ratings, for these next few episodes. We'll see. Election seasons always kind of ramp up, but who wouldn't want to tune in and see, how high they can shoot? We saw what Jimmy Fallon can do. And, it's interesting to kind of see the Tonight Show in this sort of format, but this is SNL. And, they impressed us with the at-home shows. I want to see them really impress us with a COVID production.
Same. I think Lauren said it best. He said, basically, we're coming back because we always come back.
Yeah.
After 9/11, we came back. Like, he's like, that's what we do. We're going to figure it out. We're going to be here. And that's that.
They're pushing forward and we're going to be along for the ride. And that is pretty darn dangerous and exciting. And I wish everyone over there the best. I know they're all going to be trying hard to pull it off, and I really, really hope they do.
So, Steve, how do you feel about getting 5 episodes in a row?
Well, like I said, I'm breaking a sweat at the thought of it.
That's a wet ass Steve.
Yeah, like WAS for sure. And it's not, because I am stressed out about covering it. I'm stressed out on their behalf. I know how much work they put into it, how taxing it is. And for them to do 5 in a row with the added challenges of doing this, the most sanitary, distance way possible. This is got to be on their minds. And, I'm sure they're excited to be back to work, but I think they're also a little bit, dreadful of it, and I can't blame them. But yeah, 5 in a row. It's unprecedented. And I would love to learn more about where that decision came from, because you would think, under the circumstances, this would be the last, time in
right. Why would you pack your schedule when it's already an uphill battle, right? Lorne Michaels spoke to it. It was in one of the articles. He said, we looked at how the debates are being scheduled, and it turns out that there just isn't a week when there isn't going to be something to say. Like, they really have made it a tradition to cover the debates. So he's just saying, like, how can we just miss a week when there's going to be that kind of material to draw on? But what's really interesting is he also said, like, if the election goes into extra innings, I think was the term he used, like, as if to say, if for some reason the vote count goes crazy and there's just this huge circus around the election, they just might keep at it. If there's something worth saying, they might just keep pushing episodes out. And I guess he has the flexibility to be able to make that call at some point. So they may do 5+. It's interesting that they don't actually have one scheduled for election week.
It's November 3rd.
It's November 3rd.
Yes.
Okay. So if it's November 3rd and they do the last week in October, then they take a week off, then there's basically 2 weeks, when the election's going to be happening that they're not on. So that's very interesting. So if things do go crazy, he may call an audible, and maybe we even get a 6th one in there somewhere. Again, unprecedented times, and it seems like they're just keeping all options open and being as fluid with everything as they can be to make hay, with the crazy times that we're living in.
That November 7th episode that is not yet scheduled, that would be the 6th in a row, I'd be shocked if it didn't happen one way or another. Well, that seems insane.
If it takes a long time for votes to come in, maybe it's the calm before the storm, right? Like, maybe they want to come back when things literally go, thermonuclear. Maybe that's the goal. Like, wait till there's some sort of finality, and then the question becomes, well, is anyone going to contest it? Is it going to be like the 2000 election, or crazier. That's maybe the question mark. Maybe that's what they don't know yet, whether it's better to capitalize on that situation or just cover the election proper. Again, I think they're just making it up as they go, but, who knows if there's something to be said. Lauren says they're coming back.
I'll certainly be intrigued about the fifth episode and the sixth and potential sixth and seventh episodes. The material that they get in there that's not political, because the whole thing's not going to be political no matter what, right? They might have more of it, but surely they're not going to produce 5 straight episodes, purely 90 minutes political comedy.
It'll be politics, COVID, social issue, COVID, politics, COVID. That's going to be the rundown for the show.
Yep.
Like, great. What else has been going on? We've all been housebound for like 8 months now. So, I think they're going to be pulling from the only experience that most people are having. Like, what are we going to talk about? Well, what do we all have in common? What's going on? It's going to be the crazy controversy of the day and relatable COVID stuff that hopefully we can all wink at. And then the politics is going to be, the first 15 minutes of the show and then how many sketches after that and weekend update. Like, I think we kind of know what we're in for content wise.
Yep. Yeah. I hope we get a little whimsy thrown in there.
Oh, well, there's always clever stuff, they do surprise you, especially with the pre-tapes. That's where they can really flourish and, figure out something from pop culture, just something else that's, just a little, more disconnected from the world and just a self-contained little gem. If we get just, one of those an episode, it'll make maybe slogging through some of the other stuff that, maybe weighs down the show a little bit. If there's just one thing we can pull from each episode and we say like that needed to exist. That's all I'm hoping for. And then, if the politics is fun, even better, but, it's going to be tricky waters to navigate.
All right. Well, let's move on and let's talk about our first host and musical guest. We got Chris Rock and Meg the Stallion. Steve, how do you feel about those?
Well, I expect this episode to be on a 7-second delay, at least for the music portion. Now, I don't think I've listened to the entirety of WAP. I guess I'm just scared of women's sexuality or whatever. But I think it's safe to say we're probably going to see Cardi B in there as a guest of the guest host, guest host inception. Musical guest, I should say. And Chris Rock, what a perfect choice. Great friend of the show, someone that we're familiar with and someone we've seen on the show in recent times. So it just feels warm and fuzzy and right to have him there. And I think we need a little bit of familiarity to bring us into this season because a lot of things aren't going to look quite the same. So we should have as many friends surrounding us as possible. Chris Rock is better than ever. He's still at the top of his game. And
I'm excited to see him back. John, you?
Oh, well, yeah, of course. There's nothing bad I can say about Chris Rock. The nice thing that he brings to the show is a stand-up monologue that they can let run for 10 minutes. They're not going to be itching to move on. And, it's going to be harder to produce live sketch fare. So if they can bring in a stand-up of his caliber and let him just fill that time with grade A material, take it and run with it.
Yeah.
So between a really heavy political cold open and Chris Rock, we're going to be about half an hour into the show before they have to worry about their first live sketch.
True.
So I think it's good casting or good booking. He's not a cast member. It seems like, well, he's New York adjacent, so it fits, right? Like it needs to be people in the city or in the state because of your quarantine and lockdown rules. It's going to be hard to fly people in from the coast just for the 1 week stint if they're not willing to hang out in New York for 2 weeks before and after or whatever. So, they're probably going to have a lot of local people, coming up. Actually, why don't we get into that, Katherine? Because I think we had some listener feedback along those lines. So why don't you set that up?
Yeah. So Oreo Monogatari actually wanted us to discuss this, other hosts and, for this season. Who would you like to see? Who do you think we will see, Steve?
I'm not sure. Leading up to this, I thought, maybe we'll see Robert Pattinson on there since he's doing Batman, and that'll probably, be buzzed about before the season is out. But yeah, he went and got the COVID. So yeah,
they
had to shut down production. I think he's over it now. But I was thinking, Robert Pattinson, being the new Batman and his work with Christopher Nolan in that Tenet movie, he would have been a great host. And I think
him and Pete are kind of buddies too.
Are they? I didn't know. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. I could see them palling around, tall, lanky dudes. But yeah, that would be great. I could see Scarlett Johansson hosting to promote Black Widow, of course, and
she's already in the bubble, right? Like
she's already in the bubble.
That totally fits.
I'm sure we're going to get mostly New York East Coast hosts that,
For sure.
And I imagine we want experienced people that are kind of friends of the show. You're probably not going to get a lot of first time hosts.
You can't hold hands,
this
right?
Type of scenario.
You can't get someone up to speed when they don't even know what the show is. You need someone that can roll with it.
Right.
That's why they need seasoned vets. Yeah.
And they literally can't hold hands.
Exactly. Yeah, I was trying to make that pun, but thank you for driving that home.
What is Donna going to do? Donna, the host dresser. They're going to have to handcuff her to prevent that.
She'll be 6 feet ahead, over here.
I did my best to will into existence in creating the opening for this video thing. I made it as if it was going to be host John Mulaney and musical guest Taylor Swift. I did my absolute best to just will that into existence, and it didn't come true, but I'm still holding out hope that will happen because we got 2 New York people that have been there before, and man, I would love to see that combo. John, what do you think?
Everything that you guys said. I was going to point out that ScarJo might be an obvious one to tap since she's, already close to the production and probably, just twiddling her thumbs in an apartment somewhere around New York. Aside from that, I've always thought Jason Sudeikis needs to come back at some point and just sort of plant his flag as, an alum friend of the show who's game to come and host. Like he's been Biden in the past and come back for that. But I feel like he's one of the, former players that should be one of their returning hosts, like a Hader, a Sandberg, or a Tina Fey, or, people of that caliber who represented the show well when they were on and who still has a measure of heat. He's got a new project on, Apple TV Plus that's just dropping right now, among other stuff. So, it seems like he'd be someone good to bring in. But there's no precedent for that. He's not someone that has hosted so many times that you would just slot him in and say, yeah, this is someone we know is going to work no matter what the production looks like on any given week. So who knows, but he's just always someone that I thought sooner or later we got to see him back.
We could do some interesting things with the Joe Biden multiverse as well.
Sure. Yeah. I always think the handoffs are fun when they find a classy way for the outgoing impression to sort of usher in the new one. So if he was some politician having a conversation with the new Biden, who we will talk about shortly, maybe there's something there, but I don't think that's really necessary, especially if they've got debate sketches to tackle. I don't think they're going to be trying to wedge him in for some sort of, poetic handoff. But yeah, I don't know. I like Sudeikis. I like it when he comes back. I think he's a fun guy.
All right. Well, we touched on it a little bit, but let's move into our next piece of news, which is one of the biggest ones, I think. This got a lot of talk about it. We have Jim Carrey playing Joe Biden.
Canada's sweetheart.
Steve,
Jim
I think
Carrey.
you have some thoughts.
I have thoughts, and I wish I could make sense of them because I've been thinking about this a lot and just trying to connect it in my mind. Like, sure, Jim Carrey, very funny guy, very capable of performing comedically. I think he's done it once or twice in his career. I've been just trying to envision in my brain what his Joe Biden impression would look like. And it just won't materialize. I mean, I keep trying. All I can see is him doing Ronald Reagan. And
yeah,
I'm
vexed as well.
I don't understand why they chose him. He's a very physical performer. I guess they're deciding on a very physical portrayal of Joe Biden. You know, as reserved as he is in real life, they've always seemed to give him that extra childish pep, especially with Jason Sudeikis' iteration. So maybe they want to tap into that again. But the more I think about it, you know, obviously he's a big name and he's going to get the draw, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, we've seen several different Joe Bidens. So the big thing this signals to me is that they're wanting to take the character and make a marked, we're doing it in a different way now. This is our new take on Joe Biden. Officially, it's not going to be Sudeikis. It's not going to be Harrelson. This is going to be our new thing. But as for why it landed on Jim Carrey, I am also confused, but very excited to see it. I think it's definitely going to be interesting. John, do you have any, are you more hopeful about the Jim Carrey Biden?
Oh, I have thoughts, and they cut both ways. I don't always enjoy it when the show comes at a political caricature in an obviously intentionally positive or negative way. Like, I like the politician to be able to dictate what's funny about them that's worth lampooning. I don't want the performer or the show to necessarily have an agenda about what they would like to say about the politician. And my concern is that maybe this is going to become sort of a let's humanize him a bit, or let's try and paint a picture of Biden that is maybe even a little more likable than Biden. Not that Biden really struggles with being likable, but I know Jim Carrey's politics, and I know that he is fervently, interested in the outcome of this election. And so I wonder where his thinking's at, because ultimately he's going to craft this person for better or worse. And does that mean the show's going to pull punches? Because, well, Carrey's not on board with casting Biden in that light. The show has a very interesting track record of how they portray politicians, and sometimes when it's intentional and when their biases are on their sleeve. And I just have a feeling that because Jim Carrey's bringing so much passion for the election with him, I don't see how that couldn't play a part in how they view it. And I honestly would love to see some ripping on Biden's gaffes and, the verbal diarrhea, and there's stuff that's rife for comedy if the show is brave enough to not try to make Biden as sympathetic and likable as they possibly can. But there's a lot of people at the show that are very interested in making Biden as likable and sympathetic as they can. And so I'm just wondering if comedy will be sidestepped in the interest of painting a version of Biden that, maybe could impact an election.
Yeah, we have a lot hanging in the balance on this election, and I would be very surprised if, especially knowing the politics of a lot of the people at the show, if they weren't taking it, a lot of it on their shoulders to say, we can't mess around with this.
They're not a neutral observer. They're not trying to be.
Right.
They've made that very clear for the last 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what it is, but I would certainly anticipate that they're going to be doing everything they can to make sure that Biden looks good.
Yeah. And if that's the funniest Biden, then great. I'd be happy to see it. But that's yet to be
Alrighty
seen.
then.
All right. Well, we have discussed Jim Carrey quite a bit, so let's move on to our next big piece of news, which is that we have all of our cast members returning, plus 3 new featured players, and is also some writing room updates. So let's hit this first, as Anna Dresden has been promoted to co-head writer, and Tom S. was wondering how we think this is going to affect the show's material and shape. So Steve, what do you think about Anna Dresden's promotion?
I think it's great. I am not surprised, and I can, I'm speculating here, but I think she showed that she was up for this role with her at-home material and the stuff that she wrote for those SNL at home, because her material was some of the best I found, and some of the most interesting stuff that we saw in those limited episodes. So I think she really impressed everybody that she worked with her performance in those very difficult times. And yeah, I think it was just the greatest sales pitch for her to be in this role. So I'm more than looking forward to it. It means for me that we'll be getting more quality material like that. Even things that, she's not directly involved with, she's going to have that stamp of approval on. We're going to hear a little bit of her voice, a little bit over everything. And that's just going to, I think, improve the entire show for the better.
Yeah. I'm really excited about it. I think she's my favorite writer at the show right now. She consistently brings stuff that I really enjoy. And I think when we wrapped our coverage of season 45, she was one of the ones that I said I would love to see her get promoted to a co-head writer position. Yes. So I think Lauren's definitely listening to us, first of all. And second of all,
it's pretty obvious.
I think we're going to get some more of those sort of observational sketches that Anna really nails. And I, for one, am excited to have a female up in the co-head writer position again. That's, as Tina Fey says, a lot of times it takes someone being in the room. So that's exciting for me. And I just love Anna Dresden.
Yeah, it's a good thing you said something.
You're welcome, Anna.
That Katherine Coleman, she has a good point there.
I hope that's not your Lorne Michaels impression.
That's
well, we know who's not going to get hired.
Yeah. We're all totally in the tank for Dresden. We said it all on our previous outing. We know that she's been distinguishing herself. We know that she leads a cadre of writers that are able to find the stupidity in the mundane, and really just turn a phrase in a really clever and charming way. During the at-home shows, I'm pretty sure that she was in the mix on that prom sketch that was one of our best. Because that very much has the voice of, let's take an awkward situation and let's just mine it for every weird little truism, that we can highlight and bring out and just lay it bare for people to recognize, oh, how ridiculous is prom. And there's unending great comedy that you can get when you're hardwired to see the world in those terms. Everything is ridiculous. And she's got that. And, she's done, some solid stand up that's kind of in that same vein. And, you can just tell she's got a mind for it. And, obviously the work ethic to continue to distinguish herself at the show. And, I couldn't be happier. It is definitely a promotion that we were all expecting and hoping and applauding. And now we can officially say, yeah, good job. We expect great things, but you've already shown us that you're capable of it. So by all means, please deliver a fantastic season and we will sing your praises forever, Anna.
Yeah. All right. Well, congrats, Anna. And next up, we have all of our returning cast members coming back, which is interesting to hear. We also know that Lauren mentioned that some of them are going to be splitting time, and he sort of alluded to possible shorter seasons. And then we had our listener, Tom S., wanted to know how we think all these returning performers, how are they going to evolve, and what are their priorities going to be for the season, and what will this look like?
Well, yeah, I definitely see Mikey and Alex leading the pack. Maybe not while Kyle and Beck are still there, but I have seen that in them ever since they started on the show. Especially Alex, where I think, a guy like that can definitely be the leading man in a lot of sketches and really, take over the driver's wheel. I've seen that in him from day one. So I've always felt safe with him in the cast. And, I knew whoever we lost and whoever was going to be still on the cast, having Alex there was, definitely a good thing because he's just so great. As for Melissa, I feel like this will be truly her time to shine. You know, she had a bumpy first couple of years. Maybe we weren't sure if she was going to stay on, but now that she is, and we are probably, you know, losing some of the Chicago ladies, this is going to be truly her time.
Yeah. John, how do you think our returning players are going to evolve?
That's a big question. So I'm just going to kind of pull back and maybe talk in generalities a little bit. Cause as you know, I have no love for trying to like insert new players into the, niche that older players had in the ensemble. SNL is an ensemble and it's ever evolving and it needs to reflect the culture in a way, right? Cause they need to be able to comment on the world as it is now. And so the needs of the ensemble change year over year. And you really have to be inside of the production to really know kind of where they feel they need to, maneuver a player or, you know, fill in a gap or what they really think would help, build out the ensemble in a way that they can just do better comedy. So because of that, it's a really fruitless endeavor to try and, sort of like anticipate the trajectory of any player. Cause when you look back, there's very few players that if you saw them on their first episode and then you saw them on your last episode, you could have pegged who they would have grown into on the show or who became the leading man or who became the, you know, the jack of all trades or who became, you know, the impressionist. Like, it's like people evolve as long as they're on the show. And there's just, yeah, like there is a little bit of that when it comes to the impressionist side of things, but otherwise I see everyone kind of being fairly distinct. And I think that that's probably conscious. I think the show, as they build out the lower ranks, they're not really looking to just, well, we need a whole lot of blonde, pretty people. Like, I don't think that there's anything like that generic where they feel like they need more than one person to serve in a certain aspect of the ensemble. And I think that our new hires that we'll get into in a couple minutes, obviously, I think continue that notion that, they're very smart about creating people that have enough unique aspects to their persona and their comedic approach that they're not stepping on each other's toes too much. Cause I don't see a whole lot of that in the lower cast. I'm not saying anything new here, but in broad strokes, my hunch is that even though in the midst of COVID, the show said we want all hands on deck and there's an opportunity to have a bigger cast because people are going to be sequestered and split off into different units. And, when you're working on a sketch, it doesn't mean you can necessarily be cross-pollinating on a lot of different projects. So having more performers that you can then spread out, into their own little mini productions makes a lot of sense right now. If COVID ever goes away, and I certainly hope that it does, that will change. And then the show's going to have to start looking at, okay, as we bring the production back to its baseline, is there really room for all these players that can effectively do the same thing? And that's where I think a lot of our senior players, especially ones that maybe have sitcoms that have already been picked up or, you know, maybe have other projects on the go or even shows that they're currently involved in and they're not even coming back to New York for the new season. Like, I think there's some players that they have enough stuff going on that they're not really gonna be hurting too much if they decide to move on mid-season or at the end of the season. I think that turnover is going to happen, though I've been saying it for 4 years and we still haven't really seen much turnover. I do think that obviously, you know, we're so top heavy at this point out of necessity, but eventually that's going to pop. And, hopefully we just get good send-offs for people and it's not like we shut down the production and never see them again. Hopefully, you know, the people that deserve swan songs get their swan songs, and then our mid-tier players, they can just blossom and thrive and become the new stars of the show.
Yeah. I don't think any of us were surprised that everyone's coming back. That's pretty much what we predicted. As much as we've been saying for, you know, years, people have been saying, you know, I think that Kate and Cecily and Adi are going to go.
Right.
You know, they're not going to, this is probably their last season. This was the time where we all said, yeah, they're going to be back.
Sure. Yeah.
Because
COVID was
of the
kind
situation.
of a game changer. Yeah.
Right. So we're not surprised there. And I do think that, you know, Lauren even said that, you know, some of them won't be there every week. So we're going to see some of that, and that's certainly going to be interesting to see, you know, who's there and who's not. And that's kind of a fun little new game to play. And then I think that leaves our sort of mid-tier performers. They're just looking at a lot more screen time, and I imagine they're very excited about it.
Yeah, that's true. If we've got a full cast in name only, but some of them really are just kind of doing what like Eddie Murphy did his last season, where he just kind of pre-taped some stuff and, was barely involved in the production. If we do have some of that and we can keep them on because we want a steady ship right now, we want the familiar faces, but it doesn't mean that they need to dominate the show. Maybe that is the solution here. Maybe the bigger cast isn't a reflection of less opportunity for the young people. Maybe it is just signaling that we can let that be top heavy because we know we're not going to be leaning on our top cast this season. Right. If that's the case, great. Sometimes it's nice for them to kind of usher out slowly and get comfortable with the idea of not being like deeply ingrained in the show.
Yeah. So with that, this is the part I'm most excited to talk about, are our 3 new featured players. So we have Lauren Holt from UCBLA, who was actually supposed to start at the end of last season, and then that obviously got hosed. We have Punky Johnson, who is a stand-up from New Orleans, and Andrew Dismukes, who's been a writer on the show since season 43. He brought us Bayou Benny, which I think was probably pretty close to his heart, and then also Del Taco Shoot and Brothers.
And he is also from New Orleans, is he not?
Texas.
I believe
Austin.
I know he went to college in Texas, but I know he's Cajun.
Yeah, that's what made me think.
I'm not actually sure where he's born, but I know that he came up in the Austin scene. Someone who contributes to the show was telling us a little bit about him performing at his improv house. So he definitely comes through the Austin circuit.
Lauren Holt, I've did a little bit of research, and she's got some spunk. I really see a spot on the cast for her. Having said that, I definitely get a kind of an 80 Bryant vibe. So with this hire, I'm thinking maybe they were looking to the future a little bit and thinking about what kind of talent they were going to be losing and what kind of niche new hires should be filling. So I think they were pretty intelligent with this. And yeah, Lauren has definitely got some chops. I quite enjoyed the parent-teacher conference short. If you've seen that floating around online, it's a great sketch that she was involved with. And yeah, if you want a great example of her energy and, what she can bring to the show, have a look at that video, because that was a very funny premise. I mean, she didn't write it, but she took the material and elevated it for sure. So I get it. I see the appeal and I see the potential in there. So Lauren Holt, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you there. So moving on to Punky. This is another one I'm definitely looking forward to. I had the pleasure of listening to a bit of her stand up. She's been on a lot of stuff. You might have seen her on Crank Yankers, and I think Adam Ruins Everything. That's a show, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't know she was on it, but yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I know she's on it. I don't really watch that show because it really lives up to its name. But her stand up is fire. She is just so witty, so hilarious, and just an amazing performer. She has this confidence, and yeah, I think she could do great things with the show. She has this she reminds me of a female JB Smoove. Like she's definitely got that command of the stage, and I think she's just got a brilliant mind. And, as an openly gay Black woman, obviously there's some diversity there that is being brought to the cast, but I think this is probably the gayest cast that we've had in the history of SNL. I don't think we've had as many openly gay cast members. That might have been true before she was even hired with Bowen on. But it's nice. It's nice to see a more representative cast. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of people that watch this show that I'm sure appreciate having someone there to have as a role model. And it's just something that a lot of television has been lacking is good role models for people of these walks of life. So
what do you think about Andrew?
Andrew Dismukes. Well, we've seen him on the show a little bit. I think he was
he's cast
part
members.
of the audience.
Yeah.
He's been a part of the audience before in the sketches. obviously he didn't really showcase much of his talent there. That was more of a, hey, we need a face moment. But, you know, you listed off a couple of the sketches he did. Obviously, I've, you know, gone crazy over the Del Taco sketch. And this is what interests me about this hire, because obviously he's a funny guy. He's got great stand-up and he's a great performer. But I've always enjoyed his writing because he knows how to write to the strengths of other cast members. So I'm interested in seeing what he is going to write for himself, because, you know, aside from the Del Taco shoot, which was very Beck, very Kyle, we also had the master class sketches from the At Home SNL, which was great, great material for the, you know, the impersonators of the cast. So with him on the cast and having to, you know, submit material for himself to perform, I'm interested in seeing how that pans out.
Yeah. Of all the people in the writing room that I thought were likely to become cast members, he is not the one that I expected. Not because he's not funny or not good. You know, I think I've really liked his stand up. I've been checking him out some since the announcement. But I really thought that we were going to get, like, you know, maybe Sudi might be, on the cast. Like, I'd like to see that. That'd be really cool. But yeah, I was a little surprised, to see him on that list, but I'm excited about it, especially now that I've watched more and more of his stand up, to see what he has to offer. I think we're in for some good stuff there. With Punky, so when the announcement came out, I immediately went to everyone's Instagrams. And based on Instagram, I was not sure what to make of Punky. Luckily I said, okay, well, let's try YouTube. So I saw some of her stand up. Definitely we have some unique voices, a unique voice and a unique take on things. Like you said, she's an openly gay Black woman who is going to have a lens to look through things that we haven't had on the show. So I'm really excited about that and to see what angle she brings to a lot of this stuff. And also, like you said, Steve, she really can own the stage. She's got a lot of confidence. So I think that that's going to be awesome. And then Lauren Holt is the most tried and true sketch performer that they're bringing in. You know, we have 2 stand-ups, we have a writer, but Lauren has been, you know, doing UCB sketch for a while, and I'm really excited to see her. She's the one that I'm probably most excited about based on, you know, a lot of the videos that I've seen of her. I also just think, you know, she immediately posted on her Instagram that the dream was coming true, and that immediately won over my heart of oh, I'm so happy for you. So yeah, I think we have 3 really interesting hires here, and I'm really excited to see what they bring. John, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely interesting. Lauren Holt, didn't know anything about her, cause I don't really keep my finger on the pulse of LA stuff usually. So, you know, had to do a little bit of research, but, she's got a knack for musically oriented stuff, which I think could translate into something interesting on the show. I have no idea what that would look like, but, that's something that she's bringing to the show that might be unique. So I'm excited to see if that bears any fruit. Otherwise, like you said, yeah, seasoned, performer, obviously, you know, made a name for herself out there. So kind of like, you know, Heidi, I didn't know anything about her coming into it, but, the people that end up distinguishing themselves at the improv houses out in LA, you know, the ones that rise to the top, they rise to the top for a reason. And, right. So I'm excited to be able to try and put my finger on what is it that the show saw that really made her, you know, the one that they coveted. And so, you know, more questions than answers with Lauren, but, I'm just excited to find out what it is they want from her. What is she going to bring? Punky Johnson, that's a different story. I have a bit of context for Punky. When I wasn't distracted watching the world burn this summer, I had an opportunity to, do some producing on some, podcasts for people that are SNL, associated, you know, former players and, tangential stuff in the comedy scene. And Punky Johnson was featured on one of the casts that I'm working on. So that's just kind of interesting that the timing just sort of panned out that way. So I can't really say much else about that production because that episode hasn't dropped yet. But it is just interesting that sometimes when someone's arrived, they've just kind of arrived, and all of a sudden you realize, oh yeah, they're just popping up everywhere, and you get exposed to them very quick, and you just kind of get a picture of why people are saying, oh, you know what, there's someone with star quality, like there's someone that they've got something, and you see that immediately with Punky. If it's just some zest that just kind of perks you up, and there's just an energy and an enthusiasm there, and I totally get that. With Lauren Holt, I have no idea what the show wants from her. With Punky, I think I have a pretty clear picture. As far as Andrew Dismukes, we've talked about the stuff that he's been doing that we've liked for a while. He's another writer that often comes up in conversation as someone that was bringing something just a little more fun and kooky to the show, and obviously behind the scenes, he's a bit of a cut up. Like it's funny when you get on the writing staff, it's kind of like your audition never ends, because if you just really kind of insinuate your way into the 17th floor and become everybody's pal, and you're the goof that's always making people laugh, eventually someone says, well, geez, like, put him on screen. And we get that. We get that quite often, from Rob Schneider to Mike O'Brien, and like that's an ongoing, well, Tina Fey even, that's a tradition with the show, that they would never turn away a writer if it was obvious that they had something that could translate to on-air talent. It's just his story at SNL has just gotten more exciting, and I'm excited for him. And welcome to the new players. I hope you all just hit the ground running and just find your groove, and we have a wonderful season together. That's what we always hope, and can't wait to see what they all bring.
Yep.
Beautiful.
I'm very excited. All right. So we have one patron question that we have not touched on yet. And this comes from Monette.
One of our longest and truest listeners.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. She was probably the first question we ever featured on the cast.
Well, she wanted to know our thoughts on a piece of news that did get a little buried, and that is that SNL's setting up a diversity scholarship at several comedy clubs around the country. And so it's a big piece of news, and I hate that it did get a little buried. So Monette sort of said that she thinks that Lauren is thinking long-term about his legacy and what that looks like. And so, John, what are your thoughts on this diversity scholarship news?
It seems kind of inevitable. Like, now that someone's, spelled it out, it's kind of what they've already been doing, just in a more formal way. They've already developed inroads with basically every sketch comedy haunt in the major centers of the US. And it's not just like, they go and hang out and observe. They have processes in place where the people at those theaters, they are basically scouting, from all the classes and all the people that come through. People are fast tracked if they show certain talent, and they get to kind of like be put on short lists, so that when SNL comes out, there's already like a roster of people that probably fit what SNL is looking for. So all of these, all this infrastructure to build out the bench, and build the farm team, so to speak, that's already been in place for a long time. And this is kind of like the next evolution of that, creating more ways to bring in talent from as many sort of disparate sources as possible. And if someone's going to shine, they're going to shine. And if there's an opportunity for them to recognize it and give them, open the door and give them a leg up so that they can maybe prove themselves at the show, fantastic. As SNL becomes more of an institution, they need to have more of this kind of institutionalized recruiting and just all of these systems in place to continue to breathe life into the show season over season. So yeah, that's really all I've got, is that it makes total sense, and it's just a nice thing to do. It's just one more avenue for someone that maybe has a real passion for the show and really wants to take a run at it. It's maybe just one more opportunity for them to maybe find a path to the show.
Yeah. Most of these comedy theaters already had diversity scholarships running. But local comedy theaters aren't huge money-making machines, so it's nice to see that they're going to get a little infusion of money to go towards those scholarships. And I think that this is huge news, and it's something that I've been surprised didn't already exist, honestly. So I'm really excited that they're doing it. I think it's a very important thing in comedy. Like I already alluded to, Tina Fey said, having someone in the room that gets the joke is your first step to, getting a more diverse range of comedic takes on your show. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a huge move, and I think it's so important to do, and I'm really excited.
Right.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not up on the details and everything, but I do think this is a great initiative. The real idea is to make sure that you're appealing to all sensibilities, and it can't just be the one decision. It can't just be Lauren picking everybody thinking, okay, this is what I find funny. You have to have open ears, and you have to know what appeals to the masses, and just how to find something for every corner of your audience.
All good stuff. Hopefully we covered it, Manette.
Yeah, so we covered a lot of news tonight. Does anyone have anything else they need to say? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm holding it.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks to Steve Finn and John Murray. And thanks as well to our most generous patrons, Sam Bowers, Neil Weinstein, Justin Gardner, Carissa Eubank, and Brian Clark. If you're enjoying our show, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever app you prefer to listen on. Your subscription helps us grow, and your support is greatly appreciated. We'll be back in 1 week to cover SNL's Season 46 premiere with host Chris Rock and musical guest Meg the Stallion. But until then, this has been episode number 115 of the Saturday Night Live Afterparty podcast. I'm Katherine Coleman. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.